How much can one endure insults, even from those closest? Sometimes the vessel of patience overflows at the most inconvenient moment, and then the lesson these uninvited guests receive will be etched in their memories forever, even if it happens as the clock strikes midnight. Enjoy listening. Elisa cherished tranquility. Not the deafening silence that clogs your ears in an empty house, but the kind that descends in the early morning, when dew still glistens on the grass and the sun is just beginning to filter through the branches of an old apple tree. In this quiet, she would savor her coffee on the veranda of her home. The house, inherited from her grandmother long before her marriage, was her sanctuary and refuge. It smelled of wood, dried herbs, and the faint lingering scent of her grandmother's perfume, seemingly ingrained in the very walls. Elisa worked remotely as a graphic designer, affording her the luxury of living outside the city, breathing fresh air instead of exhaust fumes. Her husband, Kirill, did not share this love for quiet. To him, silence was synonymous with boredom. He had grown up in a cramped city apartment where someone was always talking, laughing, or the television was blaring. His life was a symphony of domestic noise, and he genuinely couldn't comprehend finding pleasure in stillness. Kirill worked as a sales manager at a car dealership, his world a constant hum of calls, meetings, and the city's roar. Their meeting was serendipitous, their romance a whirlwind, and their decision to marry swift. Elisa, swept up in his energy, initially overlooked the subtle warning signs. She believed their differences weren't a chasm, but two shores that love's bridge could span. The first 6 months of their life together in her home were almost idyllic. Kirill, captivated by the space, seemed to be embracing her philosophy. But then his family stormed into their peaceful haven, his mother, Tamara Borisovna, and elder sister Zoya, with her brood, her husband Teufik, and their 2 hyperactive children. They didn't visit, they arrived to claim new territory. Tamara Borisovna, a woman of imposing stature and a face fixed in an expression of perpetual displeasure, surveyed the house with a proprietary gaze the moment she entered. Her sharp eyes scanned the space, appraising and mentally rearranging everything. Zoya, a more worn-out version of her mother, immediately began issuing commands to her children, who, with shrieks, scattered across the grounds like locusts. "Well, not bad," Tamara Borisovna drawled, running a finger along the surface of an antique dresser. "The furniture, of course, is your grandmother's leftover junk. We should toss it and buy a proper wall unit for here. A sectional sofa for over there." Elisa, taken aback by such directness, offered a weak smile. Kirill, standing beside her, chuckled ingratiatingly. "Mom, don't be like that. It's vintage. It's fashionable now." "Fashionable is what's comfortable and clean, my son." Tamara Borisovna cut him off. "This is a junk collector's storage and a pile of clutter." From that day on, silence in Elisa's home became a rare commodity. Every weekend, the Gavrilov family descended upon their cottage. They arrived unannounced with bags of groceries that were promptly unloaded into Elisa's refrigerator, grilling shashlik on her manicured lawn, leaving scorched patches. Zoya's children tore through the flower beds, knocking off the heads of the rare peonies Elisa had so lovingly nurtured. Elisa attempted to talk to Kirill, quote 5. Kirill winced as if in agony, quote 6, quote 7. Elisa fumed, quote 8, quote 9. Kirill mumbled, quote 10. Kirill sighed heavily, embraced her, and delivered his signature line, quote 11. But things only worsened. Tamara Borisovna and Zoya behaved in the house as if Elisa were not the owner, but domestic staff. They left mountains of dirty dishes, scattered their belongings, and unceremoniously rummaged through cupboards. Zoya would shamelessly say, pulling a costly cashmere item from the wardrobe, quote 13, and she would wear it all weekend, returning it with a sauce stain. The most painful part was that Kirill seemed oblivious to it all. When his mother criticized Elisa's cooking, "It's all so bland." He remained silent. When his sister made comments about her appearance, "You've gone a bit pale. You need to be out in the fresh air more, not sitting at the computer," he would change the subject. He was a buffer, not deflecting the blows, but softly absorbing them, allowing the conflict to smolder. New Year's Eve was approaching. Elisa dreamed of celebrating it with Kirill, just the two of them in quiet by the fireplace. But in early December, Tamara Borisovna announced her verdict, _16. Elisa, listening to the conversation on speakerphone, felt a chill freeze her from the inside. She looked at Kirill. He offered a guilty smile. _17, _18. Tamara Borisovna thundered. _19, and she hung up. Elisa stared silently at her husband. _20, _21. He spread his hands. _22, _23. Her voice trembled. _24, _25. He frowned. _26. But for Elisa, this was the final straw. She realized her fortress was about to fall, and the only defender who should have stood beside her was opening the gates to the enemy himself. The tension escalated. Tamara Borisovna called daily, issuing instructions, ___, _27, ___. Elisa answered through gritted teeth that they had enough of everything. She tried to sabotage the preparations. _28, _29. Her mother-in-law exclaimed indignantly, _30. Elisa looked at her husband with despair. _31, _32. Kirill shrugged. _33. He did indeed receive a bonus, and almost all of it went towards purchasing groceries according to Tamara Borisovna's list. Elisa walked through the supermarket with a cart, her hands trembling with anger. She was buying all this for people who disregarded her completely. A week before New Year's, an incident occurred, marking the point of no return. Returning home from town one evening, Elisa found Tamara Borisovna and an unfamiliar man in work clothes in the yard. They were standing near her beloved rock garden, a composition of stones and rare plants that she had spent 3 years creating. _34, Tamara Borisovna beamed. _35, Elisa looked at her rock garden. The stones had been moved aside, and the delicate Edelweiss and Saxifrage had been torn out by the roots and tossed on the ground. _36, she whispered. _37, _38. Her mother-in-law waved dismissively. _39, _40. Elisa's voice rang with tears. "I collected these plants from all over the country. Do you understand what you've done?" "Oh, aren't we sensitive?" Tamara Borisovna sneered. "She collected plants. She should have done something useful like having children." Uncle Vitya, "Continue. Don't you dare! Get out of my yard!" Elisa screamed. Uncle Vitya looked confusedly at Tamara Borisovna. She placed her hands on her hips. "Are you giving orders? This is my son's house. We do as we please." "This is not your son's house. It's my house," Elisa shouted, "and I forbid you to touch anything here." At that moment, Kirill's car drove into the yard. Tamara Borisovna wailed. Elisa looked at her husband with a flicker of hope. _51. Kirill shifted his gaze from his mother to his wife. _52, _53, _54. Elisa laughed bitterly. _55. Tamara Borisovna gasped and clutched her chest. _56. Kirill rushed to his mother's side. "Mom, calm down. Elisa, what are you saying? How can I choose? It's Mom." And in that moment, Elisa understood everything. He would never choose her. He would always be torn, apologize, but ultimately side with his mother because he was still a son, not a husband. She turned silently, entered the house, and locked the door. Through the glass, she saw Kirill fussing around his mother, who was angrily admonishing him. Then they got into the car and drove away. Elisa sat on the floor in the hallway and cried, but these were angry, cleansing tears. She wept for her own naivety. When the tears subsided, all that remained in her soul was a cold emptiness and steely resolve. In the evening, Carol returned with her favorite pastries and a bouquet of roses. "Elisa, forgive me. Mom, of course, overstepped. I spoke with her. She won't do it again." Elisa looked at him silently. "She apologized. You know, Mom, it's hard for her to admit mistakes. But she understood she was wrong. Honestly, she said she wouldn't come for New Year's." Carol hesitated. "But why wouldn't she come? Everything's arranged. Groceries are bought. Relatives have tickets. Let's not cancel everything. Please, Elisa, let's celebrate New Year's and then I promise we'll discuss everything. I'll set boundaries. I swear." Elisa looked at his pleading face and for the first time felt nothing but icy contempt for his weakness and for herself for allowing it for so long. She nodded slowly. "All right, Carol. Let's celebrate New Year's." He beamed. He thought the crisis had passed, that his clever wife had once again compromised. He didn't notice her detached gaze, nor her late-night vigils at the laptop, where she studied not recipes but articles on the family code and consulted with a lawyer. On December 30th, an inconspicuous van pulled up to the house. Elisa methodically packed her belongings, only the most valuable items: grandmother's photographs, her jewelry box, her computer, project archives, a few favorite books, and a small rooted sprig of that very saxifrage she had managed to save. She took only what had a soul. Then a handyman arrived and replaced the locks on the front door and the gate, installing a new locking mechanism on the gates. As she left, Elisa walked around the house one last time, as one says goodbye to a friend. She stroked the carved back of her grandmother's armchair, inhaled the scent of old wood, and left without looking back. She rented a small apartment on the other side of town. After moving her boxes, she sat on the windowsill and gazed at the falling snow for a long time. Her heart was at peace. For the first time in a long time, it was truly quiet. December 31st dawned frosty. The Gavrilov relatives, excited and anticipating the celebration, loaded into 2 cars. Tamara Borisovna, in a new mink coat bought with Kirill's money, directed the loading of salads. "Kirill, you didn't forget the vodka." "Check. The caviar is in the cooler bag." Kirill, happy and proud, bustled about, carrying out instructions. He anticipated entering his home, where his beautiful wife and a set table awaited him. He was the head of the family, the master of a large house. They arrived at the cottage around 3 o'clock. The gates were firmly shut. Kirill frowned. He pressed the button on his remote. No reaction. He walked to the gate and inserted his key. The key didn't fit. "What the hell?" he muttered, starting to panic. The relatives looked at him with bewilderment. "Kiryusha, did you mix up the keys?" Zoya asked slyly. "Those are the keys," he snapped. A cold fear crept up his throat, and he dialed Elisa's number. The call rang for a long time. Finally, she answered, her voice calm. "Quote 68, quote 69, he blurted out. The relatives crowded around him. Kirill, not understanding, pressed the button. All 15 people froze, staring at the phone. In the frosty air, Elisa's clear and calm voice rang out. "Hello, dear relatives. I apologize for the inconvenience. The celebration is canceled, at least in this house. I want to thank you all. Thank you, Tamara Borisovna, for teaching me to value personal boundaries by trying to destroy mine. Thank you for digging up my lavender and showing me that memory is an empty sound to you." Amazement on Tamara Borisovna's face turned to a crimson rage. "What is she saying?" she hissed. "Thank you, Zoya," Elisa continued, "for teaching me not to lend things to people who don't value them. And you, Kirill, thank you for the main lesson. You taught me that you can't build a bridge if no one is holding your hand on the other side. You are a good son, but you never became a husband." She paused. "By the way, about the house, my lawyer is already preparing the divorce documents, And since this house is my personal property inherited before our marriage, you have no claim to it, neither you nor your mother. So, don't freeze. There's an excellent restaurant 10 kilometers away. It's called Uyut in the city. Perhaps they still have some free tables. Happy New Year." The receiver clicked off, ending the call. A ringing silence hung in the frosty air, broken only by the distant bark of a dog. Everyone looked at Kirill, whose face had transformed from proudly happy to ashen gray. Tamara Borisovna opened and closed her mouth like a fish washed ashore. The salads in the bags began to freeze. Elisa hung up the phone. In the small rented apartment, it was quiet, not hollow and empty like the abandoned house, but cozy and peaceful. It was her quiet. She made herself some coffee, sat by the window, and for the first time in a long time, simply watched the snow fall. A new life lay ahead, and this quiet was its beginning.